So it was only 3.5 months ago that I first read Fourth Wing. It is now only just under 3 weeks until the sequel Iron Flame comes out, and I feel like this has been such a hit book this year. The popularity of it has been so enormous, but we are so privileged that the next book is coming so quickly. Like, this is so out of the norm, and I think that has just fed even more into the hysteria with this fandom. So I have decided that I am going to do a reread of Fourth Wing before Iron Flame comes out, and I'm going to take you along on the journey with me. So just to let you know, this video will be full of spoilers. So if you do not want to hear any of those spoilers, if you are one of the handful of people left in the world that has not read Fourth Wing yet and does not know what happens in this book, you might want to skip this one. For everyone else, I hope that you enjoy. We are going to be getting quite critical here, and I would love to start this just by pointing out that I love this book. I absolutely love it, but I do think it's not perfect. It's not. This book is a perfect example of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we are going to be dissecting each chapter and talking about what happens, what's great, what's not so great, and basically starting to get ready for what's going to happen in Iron Flame. So thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoy this reread.
What did happen to the last 10? I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind.
So we've done chapter 1. Oh, okay. Earlier I said I was going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good, let's start. This is such addictive writing. I've got that exact same. I just want to keep reading, and it's a quick read. I started smiling whilst I was reading it. It was just joyful, which is a really weird word to say when you describe what happens in this first chapter. Just as I remembered, the writing here is good. It's addictive. I like how quickly we've gone in. So we're literally done one chapter, which is how many pages? It's page 20. So 20 pages, which is nothing really. And they're already at the point of having introduced most of the main characters. She's about to go over the parapet. Mad, absolutely mad. I like that it is such high stakes to beginning. So even within this first chapter, we've already got that first death. So she makes friends with the boy and the girl going up the stairs. The boy, Dylan, falls off the parapet as he's walking across, and she's horrified, and that's literally happened at the end of chapter 1. So those high stakes really are what keep this so addictive, because you're already like, what's happening? The bad. Straight away, I am like, are these people stupid? So first of all, Violet is a bit dumb. She knows exactly what she's going into because she lives at this war college. She is the daughter of the general. Her older brother and sister were both dragon riders. She knows exactly what she is going into. Why on earth did she pack such a heavy bag? Why on earth did she have boots with no grip on the bottom? Come on, is this really your first day here? No. You've been having training for 6 months off a general, I think her mom said, or someone, that she's been having this training off to get her ready for this. Yeah, she's so unprepared. Like, she knows what's coming, but it's like, really? And then the mom, don't get me started on the mom. I know that we're meant to dislike her. I know that. But she's basically sending her daughter to die. And luckily, the older sister, Mira, comes along and she gives her better shoes and she gives her the right clothing and she throws all of the stuff out of the backpack that she won't need, and she's like giving her this practical advice that Violet's clearly never heard before, and it's like 45 minutes to go and her sister is preparing her. Shouldn't her mom have made sure that if she was putting her third child in this situation that she wasn't going to die immediately in it. It's like she's basically sacrificing her child. And the other thing I don't get here is that obviously Violet spent her whole life preparing to be a scribe. The dad passed away a year ago. I think it says just over a year ago from the point we're at. And she started preparing to be a dragon rider 6 months ago. I don't get it. I really don't get it. If the mom was so determined that her child was going to be a dragon rider, why only give her 6 months to prepare? And she's the general. Her dad wasn't a general. Her dad was a scribe. So surely the mom would have had more authority over the dad in terms of what their kids were doing. Or just give her the option. If girl wants to be a scribe, let her be a scribe, you know? Anyway, so that's the bad. The ugly. The world building is what most people have picked up on this as being the real letdown for this book. Already, I kind of get that. I know we've not even got into the major problematic areas with the world building here. The fact that the rebels' children were all conscripted into this war college. Like, do we not see the issue there? So you've got people who are rebelling against the leadership of the country, and you're going to train them to become warriors on your side of the war. Really? Is that not just a little bit of a weak plot? Anyway, so I have enjoyed chapter 1. I'm glad I'm doing this. I'm not usually a huge rereader, but I did love this book so much that I'm happy. Let's keep going. Full disclosure, it is the next evening. I have just read chapter 2. So chapter 2 is where the cadets are walking over the parapet, which is the wall that's really high up. And the idea is that if they've got a good balance and they survive the parapet walk, they should be able to survive staying on a dragon. So the idea of balance skills. The good part about this chapter, the high stakes, definitely. So the idea that, you know, they could die at any moment, they've just watched someone die, and then, you know, it's windy and there's the, oh, will she, won't she? Obviously she's going to, because the whole book is about her. It'd be a bit bad if she died in chapter 2. So it's high stakes, really tense, keeps you on edge. Good in that respect. Good that she's made this friend. I think her name's Rhiannon. She's looking at her, she sees Rhiannon make it. Yeah, those are the good things about this chapter. The bad things about this chapter, or we'll mix in, like, I know I've been saying the good, the bad, the ugly, but the negative things about this chapter. Firstly, we've got when she's doing the walk and she starts to like lose her balance and she wants to get out of her head a bit. She's like, okay, what can I do to distract myself? She starts reciting basically the history and the geography of the world. And this is where a lot of people criticize the world building here. And on the first read, I didn't really question it, I'm going to be honest. But it's really obvious because it's literally a page and a half of telling us about the world. And this is whilst she's trying not to fall and she's just reciting, not even just facts, but whole like paragraphs of world building. In hindsight, it's not great. It's not great world building. It is what it is. As I said, the first time I read it, I didn't even realise that. Also in this chapter, we are introduced to Jack, who is a bit of an idiot. We know straight away he hears Violet's surname and he's like, I'm going to kill you because you're a weakling, I'm going to get you, I'm going to push you off the parapet. And then she gets off before he does. So we've met Jack and he's just a bit pathetic. Like, what is this whole idea about death? And so much kind of the idea that if they don't get into the college or to be a rider, they'll die along the way. Is that really necessary? Really? You're going to kill all your young people? Like Violet's 20, I'm assuming the rest are about the same age. You're going to kill them just because they fell over in the rain? I suppose it does help for the high stakes aspect. We'll learn later on as well that Jack is just a bit of an idiot. So why are we allowing basically murder? Like, one thing if they fall off because of they don't have the balance and then that's a skill they need, fair enough. Jack throws the cadet who enters the walk after him. He throws them off, and then he's basically trying to run after Violet to throw her off. Really? Is that not classed as murder? Chapter 3 read. Chapter 3, in a nutshell, they have done the parapet walk, they get off, and they're now in the college. They've got a couple of hours, basically, until everyone, all of the potential cadets, have walked across and got in. Violet hurt her knee walking over. Here, we're introduced to Dane, who is one of her childhood best friends. So he basically sees her and is like, what are you doing here? You're meant to be in the scribe quadrant. And she explains, and he's like, come on, we better get your knee bandaged before anyone notices. Because it's kind of at this point, or maybe we've already been kind of introduced to the fact that Violet has a chronic illness. At no point do they mention what this chronic illness is, but we understand that it affects her joints and her bones and her muscles. So some people have got some theories on what it could be, but it's never named. So she hurt her knee. So he's like, come on, I'll take you up to my room. We'll get it bandaged up. So they go up to his room. He's being really nice to her, really friendly, a little bit flirty. And I think at this point we're like, you know, her and Dane could be a thing. She gets her knee bandaged up and she's like, yeah, that feels much better now. It's much more supported. And then he basically goes to walk her back down to where all of the cadets are in like one of the main halls or rooms. He almost tries to steer her out of the riders quadrant. And he's like, you only need to go down this hallway and through this door and then you're in the scribe quadrant. And she's like, what? No. He, at this point, starts acting like a bit of an idiot. So he's trying to protect her and she's like, I don't need protecting. Like, I'm here. If for any reason I were to leave here and be in the scribe quadrant, my mom would find out and she'd kill me anyway. So I have to go through this. But he's all like, no, I must protect you. You can't be here. And unfortunately, this is how it's going to go for quite a while through the rest of the book. Not great. Like, nice to begin with that we meet Dane, and then not so great because we're like, oh, what an idiot. So anyway, she gets back in with the rest of the cadets. The couple of hours is up. Everyone who's there is there. They get put into wings and then sections. So they're all organised. One character I've not mentioned much yet is Xaden. So Xaden is one of the wing leaders. He's the leader of Fourth Wing, which is obviously the name of the book. Her and Xaden are very much against one another from the beginning. We've kind of just got a bit of like attitude, you know, this idea, they've described him as being tall and the way people walk around him, giving him lots of space, etc. But not in a good way yet, even though he's clearly gorgeous. So, what could happen? So we've met Xaden, we've got put into wings. Oh, and then the chapter ended with some dragons turning up, 3 dragons. Some of the cadets literally wetting themselves, some running away. The ones that run away are basically killed by the dragons because obviously they are weak. How are they ever going to bond a dragon if they're just scared looking at them? I guess that's the good part of this chapter because it still keeps that high stakes. And I think that's what she does brilliantly through the whole book. Like pretty much every chapter will remind you that we could die at any moment. And they've literally gone over the numbers again. The percentages, like half of you will be dead by next summer. Another third dead by the summer after that. And then another third dead by the summer after that. So we're constantly reminded that the stakes are high. That's one of the reasons why this book is so addictive. Even if some of the characters, Violet's mom, Dane, are just idiots. But anyway. So that's where we're up to. That's the good and the bad from chapter 3. So reading chapter 4 has reminded me about one of the other really good things about this book. So I've finished 4 chapters and we're on page 53. So the fact that the pages are so short is another reason why this is such an addictive read and such an easy read, because the chapters go by quite quickly and there's a lot of information in each one. Chapter 4 was particularly short. It was mostly a conversation between Violet and Dane. Dane's not been so much of an idiot in this conversation as he was in the last one. It was more like a learning conversation. We've learned about signets, which are powers that once you bond with a dragon, you get a special power. We've learned about Dane's special powers, which is that he can read people's recent memories if he lays his hands on their temple, or temples, on their head. They've talked a little bit more about Xaden, the fact that Xaden will want to kill Violet, and then the end of the chapter is Xaden stood at the top of 4 floors of stairs. Violet's like, oh my god, he's going to kill me, and Dane's like, you should run now. So again, we've got that kind of little bit of high stakes tension at the very end of this chapter, but mostly just a learning chapter. We've also learned about the relics. When you basically bond with a dragon, or a dragon bonds with you, you get a relic of that dragon, almost like a tattoo on your body. So Dane has shown Violet the relic of his dragon on his body, so that's pretty cool. Other than that, a pretty slow chapter. Not too much of a bad one, as I said, other than just Dane in general. I've not really got much negative thoughts on that chapter, just the positives. So let's keep going. So chapter 5 starts really well. It's kind of in 2 parts. It's all kind of their academic day. The first part is a bit of history and what they call battle brief. So it's almost real life scenario, what's going on, what questions should they be asking, what should they be dealing with, what should they be doing with it. I feel like that section was really good because it not only kind of gave a little bit more history and scenario to what is actually going on, but it showed us how intelligent Violet is, because obviously she was training to be a scribe her whole life up until 6 months before this. She knows a lot about what's going on. She knows the right questions to ask. She knows the history. So it really shows us that she is intelligent rather than just telling us. The second part of the chapter takes us into the first, what do they call it when they spar, basically? So they fight each other to practice, to see who's stronger. They're put in pairs. Again, we've got Jack, and she sees him over the side of the gym, and he just casually breaks someone's neck and doesn't get reprimanded for it. Really? Not so good there. And then we again see other fights going on. So we see Rhiannon, so that's Violet's friend, and we realise she's a bit of a badass at this kind of sparring. Violet is sent onto the mat with a second year who has a rebellion relic, so she is one of the children of the rebels who was basically conscripted. She takes a lot of pain from this girl who's fighting her. She gives it a good go, and she won't yield to the point where one of her bones breaks. And that's where the chapter ends. So again, we've got this end with the high stakes, the brutality, more on her whole kind of idea of being weaker because she's small, she's got this chronic illness. This is one of the first times that we see her take all of this pain. Literally, she's got a knee in her back. She is being forced to yield, and she won't, and then bones break. She is strong mentally, so not just intelligent, she's got a lot of mental strength, and we see that in that chapter there. So yeah, kind of good to see more of Violet's character, bad just to see the plot holes in this story. Chapter 6 was an interesting one. So it obviously ended chapter 5 with Violet getting her arm broken, her shoulder dislocated by the second year, who was the child of the rebellion person, of a rebel. Chapter 6 starts with Dane basically helping carry Violet out of the gym all the way down to the healer's quadrant. And again, he starts saying, well, let's not heal it by magic. Let's heal it naturally so you can go down to the scribe quadrant and be safe. And she's like, no, no, give me the magic healing and get me back there. So Dane kind of goes off in a huff. She gets healed. Later that evening, she goes back to the dormitory and she finds under the pillow the journal. Well, she says it's a journal, but it's actually letters that her elder brother Brennan wrote to her sister Mira before Mira started at the college. It's Brennan's way of helping Mira and writing her these letters of what she should do, what to expect, and kind of like tips. So now Violet gets to read them as well. Mira's left it there for Violet to find, and that's really nice. In terms of this chapter, there's not really much to say critically. In a good way, again, we're learning that Violet is very mentally strong. She's very resilient and is like, that's obviously a strength of hers. And then we've got this diary and we're introduced to Brennan, which the first time I read this, I would not have really thought it's so significant. Now, when we read Brennan's voice and his words, oh, it's so good. So good to do a reread of this. Hi everyone, so it's the next day. Not that you can probably tell most of the days here because I am living in this fake Oodie at the moment. Today, we're back on to Fourth Wing, so my tea should be brewed. The dogs have been fed. Poto's just looking at one of the bowls. They have to make sure it's all gone. So I'm going to get my tea, finish that off, and get back to reading Fourth Wing. Chapter 7 is another short chapter with so much in it. It's the one where Violet basically climbs a tree, which sounds really mad. She knows which opponent she's going to have to face on the sparring mat. This is where we start to see more of her intelligence. Obviously, she knows this war college. She's lived here for many years because her mom's the general. She's after these poisonous berries, which she knows that she can get up this tree. She climbs this tree in the middle of the night to get the berries, pockets them, puts them in a vial, pockets them along with a few of the poisonous things that she's gathered. So we know that she's gonna try and win these sparring matches through smarts rather than strength. While she's up the tree, just so happens that at the base of this particular tree is going to be Zaid and Riordan meeting with all of the other children of the rebels. She overhears the whole conversation. He dismisses them, they all go away, and then he stays, talks to Violet, and this is where we find out his signet power, which is that he, what do they actually call it? Like a shadow wielder or something? So basically he can use shadows. So he knew that she was there up the tree watching them. And then they have this whole conversation. This chapter kind of teaches us a few things. So again, the high stakes. The chapter even starts with Violet telling us about another student who died that day from drowning in the river, I think. And she's by the river in this tree. And then throughout the chapter, we learn a little bit more about the children of the rebels. We learn a little bit more about how they want Violet dead, but Zayden's like, no, leave it to me, she's mine. And we hear a lot of Violet's thoughts, and we basically go from, oh, this is admirable that he's helping all the other students, to, oh, what an ass for doing this or saying this, back to, oh, isn't he so dreamy? Like, she doesn't actually say that. And basically fancying him and then them having this little bit of banter. And it's really confusing because in this chapter we definitely go very back and forth on her. I hate him. Oh, but I quite fancy him. Oh, but I hate him. But oh, isn't he a good guy really? I guess this is maybe the turning point where she's starting to see some good in him. Yeah, the good, we're still getting these high stakes. We're learning about Violet being smart and intelligent and using those smarts. The bad, I wouldn't really say there's much bad about this chapter. No, I can't actually think of anything negative. It was a good chapter overall. I'm going to keep reading. So chapter 8 is a bit of a weird one because a few things different happen, but it's basically focused on the sparring and the competitions where it's basically designed to be hand-to-hand combat to weed out the weakest. So we start with Dane meeting Violet outside of the first year dorm. He walks her to her morning breakfast duty. This is where we learn how she's going to like poison the cadets. We've found out how she knows who she's going to be sparring against. So this is how she's going to actually do it. But at the same time, it starts with the idea and something we've not talked about yet, which is how they're all like 20 years old. So they're like not even young adults. Yeah, young adults. They are all adults. And obviously, Rebecca Yarros is a romance author. So this is romantasy. So it's romance fantasy, for anyone who doesn't know what that means yet. All of the cadets basically have very active sex lives, and it's almost encouraged because of this idea that they could die at any moment. So they should be having a good time, just in case. We get Dane meeting Violet to walk her to breakfast duty. That's when they bump into a couple of Violet's friends who've hooked up. And I think when I first read it, I was a bit confused because I didn't know that this was going to be a romantasy story. We do hear about them having active sex lives from the first chapter where Mira has the conversation with Violet about going into the whole situation at the War College. We get that. We're reminded of it. She flirts with Dane a little bit, and then he drops her off at breakfast duty. In the middle of the chapter, we have them going to class where they basically learn about all the dragons, which is really cool because that's where we learn about a lot of the dragons. So the different types of dragon, some of them from history, the bonding of them to the riders, some of the signet powers and things. So it's a pretty cool kind of part of the book where we're learning more about the dragons because let's be honest, it's a good book, but when the dragons come in, it gets even better. Like it just takes it up a whole notch. The end of the chapter, we get back to the sparring and she basically talks about how the weeks go on, how she poisons the different cadets all differently. And then the last one, she's accidentally poisoned at the wrong time. She should have left it a little bit later. So the person's already gone to see like the healers or whatever. And Xaden steps onto the mat to step in and be the person she's going to fight against. And that brings us into chapter 9. I realise as I'm going on here, I'm talking more about the plot and less about what's good and what's bad about it. Again, it's kind of difficult because I've given all the main points so far. So again, we've seen a lot of Violet's intelligence and how she's going to win with intelligence. And that's even just been kind of confirmed by the professor in the dragon class. Like he kept her behind at the end, was like, you know, you're really smart, you're really cunning, you're really compassionate, and that's going to do well for you. So we've been reminded of that, which is good. Then you've got this whole kind of two blokes, Dane, Xaden. Obviously Xaden's meant to be the baddie, Dane's meant to be the goodie, and this whole kind of idea of sexual tension, and that's building. So that's pretty much all good. I don't really know what I can say that's bad about this chapter other than just stuff that's been bad before. Like we've got Jack being a bit of an idiot again. We know where that's going to go. Yeah, it's just good. So chapter, was it 10 I've just read? No, 9. Chapter 9. It was all about Violet being on the sparring mat with Xaden and then a conversation that she has with Dane afterwards. So the whole thing with Xaden's great. He basically uses it as a lesson to teach her what she should do. There's a lot of sexual chemistry there, a lot of sexual tension. That's a great scene. We go into the whole thing with Dane, and then at the beginning he's being really nice. He's actually massaging out like a knot in her neck or something. And is being really caring and helpful. And then it ends with, again, him trying to protect her. I've gone and talked to the scribe quadrant and they said they'll take you and not tell your mom and then it'll be too late. And she's like, what? No, like I don't need help. It's going back to kind of like the positives and negatives of this book. Obviously, it's a negative of the character, but it's not a negative of the book. I think Rebecca Yarros was very clever writing these characters. It's just a bit annoying that we get it so much where Dane is basically trying to protect her but not help her. So it's not a negative for the book, it's just a negative for him. I think we can all see where this is going now. Like Dane is becoming the idiot, Xaden is going to start becoming the better guy. Which, yeah, we like all of these scenes with Xaden. It's so good. I am now about to start chapter 10. It's 115 pages in total. There are about just under 500 pages, and I think it's about 60 chapters. No, it's not. Where did I get 60 from? 39 chapters. I am really enjoying the reread. It's still really quick to read. It's like the fastest 100 pages that you can read, and I'm really enjoying it. Even though it's a reread and I know what's going to happen, I'm almost enjoying it more for that reason. I feel like I can enjoy the story more rather than having to absorb all of the little details, if that makes sense. So I know I said I wasn't going to update after every chapter, but I've just read chapter 10, and chapter 10 was the gauntlet chapter. So the gauntlet is another part of the training year that they have to conquer to move on, and it's almost like, think of Ninja Warrior. Do they call it that everywhere over the world? What? I can't even remember, but yeah, it's like Ninja Warrior. So loads of like assault course kind of obstacles that they have to overcome. The issue here is the gauntlet is up a huge kind of cliff face. As a squad, they have to all survive and get up the gauntlet without using any help. They have to do all of the obstacles. But we've been introduced to it. They're getting their first trial run. So I think they have I think it says about 10 goes before the actual kind of gauntlet task and day. So this is their first ever trial go. We're introduced to it. We're introduced to the concept. During their practices, they've got ropes. So if they kind of miss an obstacle, they can reach for the nearest rope, lower themselves down, and basically try again. We've been introduced to this girl in the squad, Aurelia, who is like, yeah, I'm up for this. I'm so excited. I've been my whole life training for this. My dad's been doing like practice runs in the garden and makes obstacles, and she's like really eager, and basically she dies. She falls off at a point where she can't even grab a rope. She's not close enough, and she falls to her death. And a part of me again, like, yes, I get it. It's the high stakes. We're reminded that these cadets can die at any moment. But if the squad needs to stick together, why doesn't the squad leader put practice in that's not on the actual gauntlet? Wouldn't that be the smart thing to do? Like, oh, let's have the balance beams. Let's have a practice area for that on the ground. Let's have a practice area for the kind of swinging balls and for the chimney that they have to like shimmy up, and the ramp. I get that they get to practice on the actual gauntlet, but I don't get why the people who would want them to survive wouldn't want to do some ground practice first. And again, people who are practicing their whole lives, they're learning, they're doing their whole lives, ready to go into the riders quadrant. Why aren't they practicing this kind of stuff back in their hometowns like Aurelia? It just seems a bit dim to me. Other than that, it's still giving us high stakes. We could die at any moment, which is good. We've still got this tension between her and Xaden. There's a bit of Xaden at the end of the chapter, basically them becoming a bit closer. And yeah, that's the good part of it, but I still don't get the lack of brains from half of the characters. Anyway, gonna crack on. Chapter 11, not much to say other than she makes it up the gauntlet, again with her smarts rather than her physical being and strength. Although that's getting better as well, I think, as the weeks go on. We did start before the gauntlet, again with Dane trying to talk her out to it. Run away, run to the scribe quadrant. And she's like, no, I've got to do this. I've got a plan. It's not the best plan, but I've got to do it. And she makes it up. That's it. So chapter 12 is where it gets really good, because this is where the dragons really come into it. I know we've seen glimpses of them before, we've heard talk about them before, but now we've physically met dragons. So once they get up the gauntlet, the reward for surviving the gauntlet is basically going and seeing the dragons. So they get to go into the meadow, and it's called presentation. So they get to walk through and see all of the dragons who are going to bond that year, all of them that don't have riders for one reason or another. So the dragons who are going to bond a cadet can see the cadets, and the cadets can see the dragons, but it's more about the dragons seeing the cadets. So we get to see all of these different dragons, we get to see the red ones, the green ones, etc., and the little golden one, the feather tail, that wasn't supposed to be there. So in class, the professor hadn't told them about this golden feather tail. Feather tails never usually bond. We don't see them, and it's tiny. It's the tiniest dragon. A couple of the cadets do die whilst they're out for presentation. Basically, the dragons, they can sense if people aren't right, if they're weak, if they won't want to bond them, they can kill them. And that happens to 2 people in Violet's squad. We're a few more cadets short, and we've met the dragons, and that's it. Not much to say in terms of critique for this chapter. Just, again, you know, we've got this high stakes, they could die at any moment. It's pretty much woven into every chapter. But just the excitement of the dragons. Honestly, I forgot how good this book was, and I knew it was so good, but even rereading it, it's so good. Because dragons. They're awesome. Yeah. Chapters 13 and 14. Oh my gosh. Oh my god, I'm crying. I'm so happy and excited that my eyes are filling up. Why do I keep doing this? So chapters 13 and 14 are threshing. So threshing is where the cadets get to go out into the field of dragons. All of the dragons that are available to bond will be there, and they have the day to basically not choose the dragon, but the dragon will choose them, and they bond to the dragon. In chapter 13, basically we get the start of threshing. They go out into the field. Violet's taken a couple of hours. Nothing's really happened yet. She just knows that the dragons she's come across aren't the right ones. She's not bonded to them. She overhears the boys, so Jack and a couple of other boys, one from her squad, talking about going to kill the little gold dragon who's turned up again. And she's like, why is it here? It's tiny. It's only just bigger than her. It's not a big dragon. It won't be able to have someone sit on its back to ride. She overhears the three boys talking about killing the dragon. So she's like, well, I've got to go and help. I've got to intervene. This isn't right. They can't kill a dragon. That's against our morals. So she goes out to help defend it. Then into chapter 14, Xaden shows up and he's just watching. He can't get involved, but he's watching the whole thing. And she starts fighting the boys. She puts a blade in Jack's shoulder. He runs away. She knocks one unconscious. The other one she's having a good fight with, but then it looks like she's about to lose because she's in pain. She's injured. Yes, she's used to being in pain, but this is too much. She can't fight anymore. And at that moment, she sees Xaden and his dragon Zargel fly away, and there's a huge gust of wind behind her as there's a massive black dragon who basically torches the guy that she's fighting against. And he starts talking to her. And when they talk, they're in the head, so she can hear their thoughts, they can hear her thoughts. She gets up onto the dragon. He introduces himself as Tarn, and the little gold dragon flies away with them. Oh, and it's so good. It's so good. I don't think there's anything really negative to say about this point that, you know, just general negative points I've already said. But just, I remember from my first read, the point that the dragons really show up, we're a good third of the way through, is where this goes from being good to being great. Because it's like nothing I've ever read. It's so exciting. Violet, the weakest cadet, has bonded a massive dragon. Like the most badass dragon. Yeah, really exciting. And again, we're reminded it's high stakes because someone's died. That's going to happen all the time. Even before she found the golden dragon and the boys, she said that she'd seen scorches of where people had died because they'd been burned alive by the dragons. So we're constantly reminded that death is just constantly, could happen at any point for these cadets. But really good. I was going to have a break for a bit and do some work. I have got work later, but I want to keep reading now. So I might do another chapter or two and then come back to you. Chapters 15 and 16. So we're still kind of at the end of threshing. We're still there. So I think what happened at the end of 14 was that Violet got onto Tarn's back and they started flying away, and then he dropped her, and that was the end of the chapter. Chapter 15 is basically a short chapter about the flight. So he basically caught her, got her back on, and almost magically held her in place because her legs aren't strong enough to sit and kind of grip onto him. So he held onto her instead. They get down to the flight field. At the end of the chapter, she has to go and let the people know officially the name of the dragon, so they know who's bonded to whom. So she says Tarn, and then she says, and the little golden dragon speaks in her head, and she's like, yeah, you know, my name's Andana, tell them my name as well. So then she says, like, and Andana, and then the whole place just loses their shit. They are mind blown because no one has ever bonded two dragons before. So here we've got Violet with Tarn, who's the massive black dragon, and then the little baby golden dragon, Andana. It's so sweet. And she's got both. And then chapter 16 is basically the dragons deciding if this is okay, because it's never happened before. So they almost shut off human thought. So we get some time with Dane and Violet where he's like, well, you should choose the little golden one because that'll be safer, and then you can stay here and work in the college and not go to war. And again, he's trying to save her. And then comes along Xaden, and basically in this chapter we learn what this bonding means, because Tarn is bonded to Sagal, who is Xaden's dragon. So because they're a bonded pair of dragons, they can't be apart for long periods of time. So it basically means that now Violet is going to be almost bonded to Xaden, or their lives are going to be entwined for the rest of their life, which is massive. And then the chapter ends with Dane kissing Violet, and you're like, oh my gosh, Dane and Violet are kissing. And then she's like, yeah, I don't want this. She doesn't actually want to be kissing Dane after it's happened. It's a really interesting few chapters. As I said, the dragons come in. It's where it gets good. Again, it's really difficult to see the criticisms here because we've been through all of the negatives. I now just feel like from this point, it's a lot more positive. Like the overall negatives of the book are the world building and some of the thoughts, the thought processes, and like I said, just the general stupidity of some of the characters. Why would these people who have wanted to do this their whole lives not have trained better? Like, we get it for Violet, because obviously she's been thrown into this situation only 6 months before. But for everyone else, you know, have some common sense. Anyway, I'm just rambling now. I'm going to get on with it. We are coming up to almost halfway through. Still in my pajamas. I really should go and do something that's not reading, but it's so good. So good. Okay, chapters 17 and 18. So 17 was a pretty slow chapter. We start getting into kind of flight training and the mechanics of it, and the fact that Violet's not very good at staying in her seat and she falls out, and then Tarn catches her, and again and again and again. We see her doing her new duty, which is like library duty, so she gets to go and see the scribes and take the scrolls and then bring them back and blah, blah, blah. And then we get into chapter 18, where we start learning a little bit more about the signets, and someone goes a bit crazy and dies again. Obviously, that's a common theme in this book. And she goes to sleep, she's having a dream, and then Tarn's voice comes into her head and wakes her up, like, wake up, cadet, go now. And there's 7 unbonded cadets in her room trying to kill her. And then at the very end of the chapter, we get Andana's, her signet from Andana kind of comes through, that she can stop time. So she stops time and everyone around her is frozen so she can move. Just at that point, she was about to die. Oh, it's so good. And it's such a weird, like, change of pace, because this book's been so kind of fast paced so far. And then, as I said, for like a chapter and a half, it's quite slow and steady. And then again, at the end of that chapter, there we go. Let's give you a bit more excitement. And obviously Dane and her have chatted about the kiss and both said that it means nothing but him because it was against the rules, rather as her being like, yeah, it just didn't mean anything to me. But she didn't say that to him. So that's pretty much where we're at, other than obviously like loads of other minor plot points I'm not going through If you've not read this book and you're watching this video, you should really read this book. Stop now, stop watching, pick the book up and read it all to get all of those more minor plot points. We're almost halfway, which is just crazy. This is such a fast read. Again, in terms of good and bad things to say, I've got nothing new. I've kind of already said the good and bad things. There's not really much else to critique. I'm just enjoying it so much. Okay, so chapter 19 is all about the fallout after the cadets have got into, or the unbonded cadets got into the room. We said at the end of chapter 18, they all just kind of like stood still. So what had actually happened is it's not a signet from Andana, so it's not a power that Violet can control, but it's a power that Andana has, and she just channeled it through her then. We learn at this point that Andana is a feathertail, so she's a minor, basically. It's really dangerous to do this because if she channels too much power, she could kill Violet. And if she kills Violet, what we know now is Violet and Xaden are tied together, so she'll kill them all. We've also got to the point where they're talking in each other's heads. We now have Violet knows that she can hear Sagal's thoughts as well as Tarn's, and Xaden can hear Tarn's voice as well as Sagal's, but not Andana's. So he's kind of shut out of the conversation with Andana, but the two dragons and Violet can hear Andana. And that's kind of it. We've got to the end of the chapter where Violet is about to tell Xaden who opened the door to her room, because at this point, after threshing, they got their own rooms. They left the first year dorms. And she's about to tell him who let the 7 unbonded people in. I don't know if I mentioned as well that Xaden killed those 7 people. He like murdered them all. So okay, so I read chapters 20 and 21 last night, so it's not fresh in my mind like all of the others. But basically what we've gone through chapter 20 is the fallout after the other students have broken into Vi's room, and then Xaden's come along and killed them. And what we've got is them basically all kind of on parade in the courtyard, and they decide that the person who unlocked the door to let these students, these unbonded students in to kill Violet, needs to be brought to justice. And they find out that it's this female, I can't even remember what her name is, and she was the one who let them in, and everyone's shocked. I think it's a wing leader or a squad leader, which is the difference. I can't remember. It's someone who's got a position, and Dane's like, no, it couldn't have been her. And like Violet can basically share the memory to Tarn, the dragon, and he can then share the memory with the other dragons. They can then tell the people they're bonded to. So they've got that evidence. They 100% know that it's her. That happens. They kill her, that she's executed. Then we go into chapter 21, and we're basically following the fact that Xaden has put one of his friends, Liam, into the same squad as Violet to be her bodyguard. So he's put him on the same duty as her so that Liam can basically follow her around. He's been put in the bedroom next to her so that she's got some protection, because obviously now if Violet is harmed and killed, Xaden will be as well. They are linked through their dragons, so he's got to really look after her to make sure that, yeah, she lives. And loads of people want to kill her because she's got a really strong dragon, and if they're unbonded, they can potentially rebond with her dragon. So we're now on to chapter 22. So we are into the second part of the book now. I have been working this morning. I've got more work to do this afternoon. I know I just eye-rolled there. Work is obviously not a bad thing. We need to work for the money. But I do wish I could just focus on this and read this for the rest of the day. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I might be able to get a couple of chapters in later, but that's going to be it. But the next 2 days are my days off of work. So I'm thinking, don't put too much pressure on myself. I'll get this read over the next couple of days. But today is a new day. It's a day where the realities of living with chronic fatigue hit you in the face. Oh, and the body and everything. It's like 11 a.m. I've took myself up on the sofa. I'm wrapped up warm. I've got everything I need next to me. And it's just one of those days where you just question. You just question, like, what can I do to not feel like this? And you start searching the internet, even though you've searched the internet thousands of times before. And there's literally no answer. That's the saddest thing about having chronic fatigue. You know, and people might be like, oh, just sleep more. Like, I slept 8 hours last night. I had a good night's sleep. I woke up once in the middle of the night to let Poto out to the toilet. But I had over 8 hours sleep. You know, what more can you do? I take multivitamins. I drink lots of water. The only thing I can think is that my diet wasn't the best yesterday. It's probably an understatement. I ate pretty badly. And I'm like, oh, the convenience of having pizza for dinner isn't worth this. Like, I should have had some vegetables. But I know that, like, it's a small part of it. It's a small part of it. Anyway, so my plan was to finish Fourth Wing today from this position on the sofa. So I am just over halfway through. But to be honest, what I've done so far this morning is watch YouTube. And that's the other thing with chronic fatigue. When you do, like, force yourself to rest, you want to do what takes as little brain power as possible. It takes less brain power to watch a YouTube video, like a long, steady YouTube video, than to read. That's what I've been doing. So who knows if I will finish this book today or not. We'll see, I guess. I'm at the point where I'm like, I think I've been getting to this for a while and I've been ignoring it, and I've been thinking, oh no, I'll get better, it will all improve, I'll wake up one day and I'll feel much better. And it's just been steadily going downhill. So here we are. Maybe I'll try and read a bit of this today, even if I don't finish it. I will check in with you later. So chapter 22 is really interesting because this is where the story changes again. So when the dragons come in, it's like, ah, and then chapter 22 is really where the romance comes in. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is a romantasy, so a romance and fantasy book. Rebecca Yarros is a romance author. This is what she does. She's got lots of romance books. I've not read any of them yet. I have got a couple of them. And in this chapter, we really start to see this. We start with them in the sparring gym and she sees Xaden with his shirt off and she goes a bit mad over it. And then dragons start to basically have sex and she starts to get the feelings from them and she's like, oh my god, what's happening? And she goes and finds Xaden and he starts to teach her how to block it out. But then they start kissing. We get this very sexual scene, even though they don't have sex. It's definitely that sexual tension throughout all of it. This is where one of the big criticisms of the book comes in, because this reads in the first half almost like the Hunger Games. So it reads more like a middle grade to young adult book, a coming of age story. As I've already said before, Violet is a very naive character. And then at this point, it becomes very adult and very romance. We already know, because I've read this before, that it's going to become even more so. And it's brilliant because, as I said, Rebecca Yarros, it's what she does, and it's what she does well. This is her first fantasy, but not her first romance. It's gripping. It does absolutely grip us into the story, but it doesn't feel like the same book from the beginning. We'll see. We'll see if that kind of aspect of it is remedied in the second book, and then I think there will be a trilogy, so in the third book as well. Yeah, it was good. I'm going to keep reading. Chapter 23 is where we start to, well, not start, but we really have the shift with the dynamics between our three main characters in terms of Dane, Xaden, and Violet. Basically, a conversation with Dane where she puts him straight and says, you know, you've been trying to protect me, but you've not helped me. And everything that happened with that girl Amber, who was going to get her killed, and she was like, you know, you didn't believe me, Xaden did, blah 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 blah. But the criticism from this chapter, he touches her face. Why? When is she going to realise that he keeps touching her face? And if we remember, his signet power is that if he touches somebody's, well, he says temples, but face, he can read their minds, he can see their memories. He is getting everything he needs from her in those moments, and she doesn't even question it. Like, come on, girl. Come on, you know this. Don't let him touch you. She thinks he's just being friendly and they're making friends. Oh, she is very naive. On the other side of it, we still haven't got to the actual point where she knows that Xaden can hear her thoughts as well. We obviously know that Tarn can hear her thoughts and they can talk, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously Tarn's attached to Sagal, Xaden's dragon, and they can communicate. But she hasn't figured it out yet that Xaden can basically hear her thoughts in her head. And it's been not explicitly said yet, as I've said, but hinted at a lot, where she's thought things and he's almost replied in either words or actions. And she hasn't got it. She's a bit dim. What's that saying? Dim but nice. I just want to kind of shake her a little bit and be like, use your brain. Good, but not perfect. Yeah. It's a little bit later. I've had some lunch, I've done some cleaning up, and now I'm back to resting. I've read a couple more chapters. I feel like they are kind of lesser in significance at this point. We've got one chapter where, how did it even start? That's how insignificant it probably was. But it ended with Xaden and Violet going out with the dragons for some kind of like personal flight training between the five of them. They've had the competition, the squad competition, and they were given the task of finding something that would be kind of the worst object or thing if it were to get into enemy hands. So they've done that, which I guess shows off a lot of their signet powers. We get to know the characters a bit more, like characters other than Violet, Dane, and Xaden, and Rhiannon. And Liam, we get to know more. So Liam was the one who's basically been put in place as Violet's bodyguard. So we're getting to know them all a bit more and getting to know what's going on outside of the college more, which comes into play, obviously coming near the end of the book. That's important. So it is now evening time. I've not got dressed today. I'm still in my pyjamas from this morning. I have felt rotten for most of the day, but I've eaten a good lunch, I've eaten a good dinner, I've just rested. I've done no jobs today other than make food, clean up after food. I've watched a lot of YouTube, standard, obsessed. And obviously it's easy, it's just easier than having to do something just watching passively. Anyway, I have got back to Fourth Wing. I've just read chapter 26. This is the chapter where obviously they won the squad competition. Brilliant. So they get a prize to go to an outpost near a border and visit real life dragon riders who are working and living in this outpost. Now, the practical part of me is like, okay, for the plot, it makes sense because they've gone to this outpost, the squad has, and just so happens Mira's there, Violet's sister, from the beginning. So obviously we get a bit further with their relationship and a bit more information from it. And that is nice. We get to experience them as most of the main characters outside of the college, which is nice as well. but so random. Like, could you imagine being on army training and they're like, well done, everyone, you're the best students, so let's send you into war before you finished even training. No, 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 no. There's just so many stupid plot holes here that just make no sense. And this is where sometimes I have to tell myself to stop overthinking. It's a story. As I said, for the plot, it makes sense. It's a good kind of situation to put them in. I need to really switch off my logical brain and just enjoy, because I am enjoying it. Also, they just so happen to be a 5-minute ride away from Rhiannon's family home, hour by foot, 5 minutes by dragon. Violet and Rhiannon sneak out to go and see her family because obviously, well, I say obviously, I don't think I've mentioned it, that in first year they can't have contact. They don't get letter writing privileges until the second year. Her sister was pregnant when she left. We're now 9 months into training. That's one thing I haven't talked about. Some of the chapters we've just been through are ones that kind of push a lot of time, kind of span over weeks, months. So yeah, it's been 9 months since she left them. So she's got a little nephew and she spends time with her family. And then we also get time where Violet's talking to Mira. And then they're just about to leave, and Violet turns around to Mira and says, well, how long can bonded dragons be apart from each other anyway? Because obviously Xaden isn't in the squad. He's the whole leader of the wing, so he's back at the college. And then he comes out of the shadows around the corner and says, turns out about 3 days. So Xaden's just turned up because of the dragons, and he has to because of their dragons. So yeah, that's exciting. I think I can tell I've perked up a bit since earlier. I just felt so poorly. I'm not sure I'm going to finish this tonight, but I'm just going to take it easy, read a chapter at a time, see how I feel. If I want to go to bed, go to bed. If I just want to sit and watch YouTube because it's easier, just sit and watch some YouTube. I'm going to be honest, I've watched so much today though that I've pretty much watched all the recent videos from everyone I follow, and lots of other random ones as well. And I follow a lot of people on YouTube. Probably not the best to watch more videos. I should really do more reading, but we'll see how I feel. Okay, I finished chapter 27 and I have criticisms, finally. They are still at the outpost. They've split into teams so that the riders there can take them under their wing. I don't know why that just came into my head. So the riders there can basically mentor them, show them what's going on, what their daily duties are, etc, etc. What happens is a bunch of griffins come, so the riders who are stationed there need to get out and go and do their job, and obviously the students need to leave quickly. But Violet's all like, oh, let us stay. I can help you. I don't want to leave my sister. I love you, for about 2 pages. About 2 pages of, we can help. I can come and help you. I can't think of you being left like this. I'm so upset. Like, it's her job. Mira is a dragon rider. She's been doing this for years when you've not been there. You've got to remember, Violet's meant to be 20 years old, and this is why it reads more like middle grade YA, because it's almost more like she's 14. It's a much younger attitude, you know, that whole, I can do anything, I know what I'm doing, no one can tell me what's right or wrong, I know. Like, no, you're a first year student who, as I said from my criticism for the chapter before, shouldn't even really be there. That was a bit annoying. But basically to stall, so there's just her and Xaden left, the rest are on their dragons, they're going, they're waiting for Tarn and Sagal to turn up. And because Tarn's not quite there yet, Xaden kisses her to stall. So we get this kissing moment and then they're off. Oh, also, the good thing in this chapter, plot point that happens, is she finally finds out that Xaden can read her thoughts. Finally. So they're standing there and she whispers something and he basically mentions back in her head and she's just like, what? His mouth didn't move. And he's like, oh, you should see the look on your face and da-da-da-da, and then it all comes out. Girl finally knows. And I remember the first time I read this, I figured that out way before she did. So interesting doing the reread as well, because it is glaringly obvious that he can read her mind. Glaringly. So yeah, that was chapter 27. So we're starting chapter 28. There's only, I think, 39 chapters. Yeah, chapter 39. So we've got 11 chapters to go. And I think as they start getting to the end of the book as well, they start becoming even shorter. They're short chapters anyway, but yeah, so good times. Good times. Chapter 28 was such a good one. Was it 28? I keep losing count of the numbers. Yeah, chapter 28. So they are in the war games, which basically leads up to their graduation. So they're now nearing the end of their first year. They're in what we call the war games. So they've got like offense, defense. They're against the other squads. Not even just the other squads, the other wings. They're all given tasks. So I think the tail section of fourth wing are given the task to get this egg from first wing from a defensive position in like a castle, and they are also given the objective to guard the fourth wing flag. Whilst they're going for this egg, they come into contact with first wing, obviously, and Jack, the weasel, kills Liam. And over the last few chapters, Liam and Violet have become really good friends because they've been spending pretty much every minute of every day together. They've got to know each other on a personal level. And Violet sees Jack stab Liam with this sword and kills him. Not that she knows he's dead yet, she's hoping that he's not. And she basically loses her shit. She gets angry. And because she gets angry, she can feel all the power in her building. Remember, her signet hasn't shown itself yet, her power. She yields lightning. So lightning comes from the sky, destroys the is it from the sky or from her hands? Anyway, she wields the lightning, destroys the turret that Jack is on, and he just crumbles to the ground, and she's killed him. The last part of the chapter is just Tom being like, lightning wielder. I almost want to talk about the next part because I remember it so clearly. So yeah, Liam's dead, but Jack is also dead, and she's got her signet, which is really cool. Yeah. So chapter 29 is another one where not so much really happens. It's kind of the fallout from what's just happened in the war games. So they reach the ground back at the flight field, and it's basically a chapter where Violet feels guilty. She feels bad for having killed Jack. She can't get over it. At one point, Xaden basically tells her, it's war. That's what happens. And, you know, not that you'll ever get used to killing, but it has to be done for a reason. But it's really eaten her up. She's really distraught. I was wrong. Liam didn't die. I can't believe I was like, Liam's dead. Liam didn't die, so he's obviously injured. We don't really know much more about that yet, but yeah, Liam is not dead. I can't remember. Yeah, it shows that you just misremember things, don't you? So 9 chapters to go, which makes me really sad, but so happy to know that, you know, it's less than 2 weeks until the next one comes out. We're all going to read book 2, Iron Flame, and then be gutted that we have to wait like a year for the next one. Chapter 30. Remember we said earlier that Rebecca Yarros is a romance author? Chapter 30. There's a very nice scene with Violet and Xaden in Violet's bedroom. It's electric, literally, because that's her signet. They basically destroy her bedroom, and every time she has an orgasm, there's lightning outside, and he uses his shadows to protect her when they like break the window and set the curtains on fire, or God knows what else they did. Yeah. So that was good. Then it comes to the next morning, and she is woken up by the professor knocking on her door, being like, come on then, let's go and do some lessons to get you learning to wield this lightning. So they go up on the dragons above the clouds, and she manages to do it a few times, but never on target. And she's like, yeah, this is going to be harder than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, chapter 30, it's a good chapter. I'm really sad that there's only 9 more left. So chapters 31 and 32, it's a bit more of a slower time where it's pushing us through probably again about a good 6 weeks of time, pretty much through to almost the edge of graduation. They're basically saying it's been almost a year since they did the parapet. They're close to graduating, so in a couple of weeks the third years will be gone, and then obviously the first years will become second years, and there'll be a new bunch of new cadets about to do the parapet walk. We know that they'll have, like, I've forgotten what they've called it, but like a final, not exam, but something will happen to finish off the year. It's the 6-year anniversary since the rebellion was ended. So that means it's 6 years since Brennan died, who's Violet's brother, so she's a bit upset for that. And then it's also 6 years since the parents of all these rebellion children were killed and murdered, and they were basically orphaned and become children of the rebellion. So Xaden's pretty upset, and it ends with them basically kind of just pushing their relationship to the next stage where they talk about being serious with one another. Then they go back to Xaden's room and they have sex. And again, it's very good because Rebecca Yarros is a romance author. And then it ends with Garrick knocking on the door, being like, you two need to come out now. Like, as in, you need to, we're under attack. Like, grab your stuff. Yeah, and that starts chapter 33. So chapter 33 and 34 is all about this last war game. They basically prepare, they get ready, so they get dressed, they pack their bags, and they go down to the flight field to go and get the dragons, at which point Xaden pulls Violet and Liam and Imogen from Dane's squad, and I don't know if Imogen was in another squad, and into his group, the wing leader group. And Dane's like, what, you can't do this? And Violet basically chooses Xaden over Dane. And then that chapter ends with Dane saying, I'll miss you, Violet. So then the next short chapter is them flying to this outpost, which is actually outside of the wards of the country, so outside of the safety. They're about 20 miles away. They stop. They've been flying for like many hours, so they need to have a rest before they get to this outpost because they don't know what's going to be there. Basically, some Griffin riders show up, and it turns out they were welcome. Xaden turns around and goes like, you're late, as if they were expecting them. At this point, I remember the chapters do get really short. So I'm on chapter 35. There are 39 chapters, so there's 4 chapters to go. I think there's 500 pages, and I'm on like 440, so there's only 60 pages left of the book. I'm torn between staying up now, it is almost 11:15, or getting up tomorrow and finishing this. I want to stay up and read. I'm there. I'm mentally like, I want to finish this, but also I'm getting pretty tired, and after how I've been today, it would be the sensible thing to get a sleep. I hate being sensible. I wish I was more reckless. So it is now Friday, and I did read another chapter of this last night. I am thinking I will finish this today. I should right now be in the shower washing my hair, but I'm waiting for my Fairy Loot YA box to arrive, so I know it is with the courier and it could arrive anytime within the next hour. So as soon as the box gets here, I'll then shower, wash my hair, do the box opening, edit the box opening, get it filmed and uploaded to YouTube, and then I can focus more on this. So I could have no minutes to read. The box could be delivered now, or I could have an hour to read and be able to finish this. We have no idea. Also, really unhelpfully, there's some roadworks going on the estate I live on. So I think they're doing some gas works, I think. Either gas works or some phone company is pulling up their broadband lines, I don't know. So that'll be great for filming. Anyway, let's get on with this. Last night, I'm gonna have to remind myself, chapter 35. So remember there's only 39 chapters here. They're at the break point, kind of 20 miles before they get to where they're going to the outpost. So remember, this is the last bit of the war games. It's meant to be still a part of them being in this college and learning. It's not meant to be real war yet. And at this point, they're on this break and Violet realizes everyone that she's with are people who have the relics on them. So they are the children of the rebellion. She's the only one who's not. And they've just come into contact with all these Griffin Riders, and it's clear that they know them, they all know each other, and that they're okay with them. And remember, these are meant to be the enemy, and all of the other people in her squad know these Griffin Riders and what's going on. What it turns out is that they have been giving weapons to the enemy, the Griffin Riders, to try to destroy these creatures called Venin, which Violet has been told her whole life are make-believe. They're from a fable. They don't exist. And the truth is they do exist, but not in Nevers, the country that they live, because their wards keep them out. They do exist outside, and it's almost like they're not bothered politically. The people at the top are like, well, we're safe, so why should we help other people in other countries? And basically no one within the country Nevers knows. They're all kept in the dark. So what the children of the rebellion are actually doing is helping these people by giving them weapons to help them to be able to fight the Venin in the neighbouring countries on the borders. So actually it turns out that they are good. This is kind of the chapter where Xaden is trying to tell Violet all of this, but of course at the beginning she's very angry because she's like, well, these people have, killed my family, we're at war with them, everything she's ever known has just been turned on its head. The chapter ends with them flying to the outpost, and basically it's deserted. There's no one there. Liam can use Farsight, that's his signet, so he looks into the town. There's a letter there with Xaden's name on it, left at the outpost, which should have like 200 people at, and it's empty. And he said, your mission is to survive, to not die. These are the first rebellion children to have kind of gone through the process. And they thought that most of them would die on things like the parapet and through the training, and these are the ones who are left. So yeah, basically they've sent them to die at this outpost. There are, well, I know because I've read the next chapter that there's Venin in the local village, and obviously Liam can see that. Critically, I don't really know much to say about that chapter. I think at this point we've pretty much said all of the criticisms that there is. What I would say on this reread is that Violet is annoying me more. I think the first time I read this, I was very much like, yeah, she's this badass. She's this person who's been seen weak her whole life, and then she's got this other strength, and she's very intelligent and finds her way around these things, and she's very relatable in that way. And then in this second read, I'm like, you're so naive. She reads like a 14-year-old, not a 20-year-old. Actually, she can be very frustrating at times. As I said, I kind of hope that in the next book that is written out a little bit. I hope that naivety, I hope that we see that character progression with her. Because on the other hand, we've got Xaden, who is obviously very mature. He had to mature at a very young age because of what happened to him. He took on a lot of responsibility for the other children of the rebellion. I hope that we see some maturity with Violet. We have got 3 chapters left. Like, that is one of the good things about this book. She packs so much into such a small piece of writing. She's really concise, which does make it that fast read. There are so many good things about this book. There really are. Anyway, I'm gonna carry on. Chapter 36 is a lot of this battle between our dragon riders and griffin riders and the Venin and the Wyvern. And it is really good as a battle scene. This is where I realise that some of I misremembered some facts, because it's at this point that Liam dies. So I'd obviously remembered that he died, but earlier on I thought it was earlier in the book, but it wasn't, it was here. And it's one of those emotional deaths where he dies slowly. It's because his dragon is killed by a wyvern. Violet catches him on her dragon and then takes him to the ground to basically die next to his dragon. And he's like, just look after my sister. And basically it's given Violet the anger to want revenge. She's going to want to avenge his death. It's given her what she needs to carry on. It's quite a long chapter, so I've got 2 chapters left and literally not many pages. So there's chapter 37, which is 6 pages long, chapter 38, and then chapter 39. They're all very short chapters. They're all about 6 pages long each. My Fairy Loot parcel has come, so I technically right now should be in the shower and getting ready to film my unboxing of that. Plus I want to unbox it. I hate having boxes just sitting there, I can see it in my line of sight and I want to open it. I want to know what's in it. So that's why usually I'm showered, dressed. As soon as the box comes, I'm upstairs, I'm opening it. But I'm torn right now because I want to finish this and it is only a few pages long. I am still struggling with my energy today. I know it's not as bad as yesterday, but it's still pretty bad. I am going to have to try and pace myself as much as possible, which is helpful because I know usually most of my proper work is over the weekend, and actually I've not got a lot of work on this weekend. It's actually my birthday tomorrow as well, so that should be nice. And I feel like everything happens for a reason, and a lot of my students have cancelled because it's half term, so they're all busy. I'm actually pretty grateful. It means that I can pace myself over the next 3 days, knowing that what I've got to fit in is achievable. Whereas I think if I'd got a full weekend and having people around for my birthday tomorrow night, I'm having just a few close family around, I would have struggled today to do things because I'd have known I'd have to save my energy. This is the worst thing about chronic fatigue, is learning to pace, because obviously my paid work, it's how I paid my bills. It's how I feed myself and my gorgeous doggos. So that has to be a priority. But knowing that I don't have to prioritize it so much is helpful. So I'm gonna finish this. Decision made. I'm finishing Fourth Wing. Then I'm gonna get on with my Fairy Loot unboxing. Then I will get on to sorting this video out. I am so sad to be coming to the end of my reread and the end of this video. So I did read the final 3 chapters earlier, which are very small chapters. They're pretty much the size of 1 chapter overall. We finish off the battle. Violet does a lot of damage. I'm not actually sure if they win. I've tried to go back and reread, and I can't really tell because it's focusing more on her. So she does a lot of damage. Whether she kills them all or they scatter, I'm not 100% sure. I have to want to kill the Venin, and God helps me, I do. Now I push my arms toward the Venin and command lightning to split the sky, and it does, branching out in every direction. But I only need to control one of its silver blue veins. I focused on the one closest to the Venin, bringing it down in slow bursts that defy time. My arms vibrate and I feel Tarn's power push the boundaries of my body as I yank the branch sidewards in its descent, inch by inch, with the last of my strength positioning it over the Venin. More Tarn! He roars and lightning itself rips through me, sizzling my lungs and charring my very breath as Andana's gift ebbs. I don't have to be near her to feel her fatigue, her strength ebbing, but I only take what I need. Andana will live today, even if she is the only one. Finally dragging the lightning down into place as my skin sizzles and burns, I release time and hold myself upright long enough to see it strike true, killing the venin at the first touch of its energy. As if time were frozen, his body slowly topples from the top of his wyvern. In the next breath, more than half the monsters fall from the sky, as if they were struck themselves. And as it had been waiting for me to accomplish my goal, the wound in my side threatens to burn me alive. So she destroys a lot of them, but it doesn't actually say if they fully destroy them all or if they run. That's almost glossed over. So she gets revenge. She realizes if you kill one of the wyvern, it will destroy the venin, or vice versa. And then she decides that, well, if she gets that one venin, it's that way, and then it destroys half the wyvern. So that happens. Then they decide that they can't take her back to, she passes out, so we kind of get past her. They decide what to do. They're like, we can't go back to the war college because it takes 12 hours to fly there and she'll die in that time. Oh, because she's poisoned. Sorry, I should have pointed that out. So from the sword in her side, she's poisoned. And they're like, if we get back to the war college, she'll die on the way. She won't make it. So Xaden is like, oh, well, there's another option. There's somewhere closer we could take her. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. We have to save her. And then I love the last chapter because it's from Xaden's point of view. So Violet has been unconscious. We don't know how long for. I'd get the idea. Oh no, it's been 3 days. Why do I... Honestly, my brain fog is so bad with this fatigue at the moment. It's been 3 days and Violet hasn't woken up. I've redacted the square word there. So 3 days, they've been at this place. She hasn't been mended. She's been healed. She comes around. They have this chat. She realizes where they are. So they are at the place where basically Xaden grew up, that she thought as being a scribe had been destroyed. It hadn't been destroyed. People just don't talk about it. They're in this old stone castle. He's like, yeah, because fire can't destroy stone. She gets herself together, asks Xaden to leave, kind of, gets dressed, gets herself sorted. And he comes back in an hour later and they've had this good chat and everything. And then there's a knock on the door. They keep talking and Xaden's like, gosh, he's impatient. Again, I've redacted the swear word. You have about 20 seconds to ask a question if I know it's him. She asks the question and then we get the sentence. This is like 5 lines up from the very end of the book. That definitely wasn't an accident, little sister, he says from the doorway. I sigh and move to the side, watching Violet's eyes as she sees him standing in the doorway. Told you I knew better poison masters, I tell her softly. You weren't healed, you were mended. Brennan? She stares at her brother in open-mouthed shock. Brennan just grins and opens its arms. Welcome to the revolution, Violet. And that is how we end book 1. Finding out that Brennan is alive, so he hasn't been dead for 6 years. He's there. Xaden knows him. I'm trying to think what else was really important here. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Oh yeah, the battle. So this, I'm not going to do any more criticisms because we've done them all reading throughout this book. I'm sure this video is going to be long enough as it is. Thinking about where the next book is going to go, Iron Flame. So when I first read this, I must have read it really quickly. I obviously didn't take all of it in. I took a lot in, but not everything. So things like on the reread, we've had the fact that the commander whose signet is to see the outcome of battles before they take place won't have known what happened in this whole venin battle, or battle against the venin and the wyvern, because if there are more than 3, of the rebellion kids together, he can't see it. And that's why the whole time through training, one of the rules is that if it's banned for more than 3 of the rebellion children to be together at the same time. So actually, no one will know what's happened. All they will know is that they stayed there and didn't fly back to the wing, because that was almost the choice they were given when Xaden was left this letter in the outpost. It was, you can basically either stay there and help save the village, but by doing that you'll lose your command, or you can let all those innocent people die and you can fly back to the rest of the training group. So they're going to obviously know that they stayed. Anything else they're not going to know. They're not going to know that the children of the rebellion have been helping the Griffin Riders, who are meant to be the enemy of the state. They're not going to know that. They're not going to know what happened in the battle. We also know that the Venom were after something that was in this kind of central bell tower in this kind of town, and they have it. Not the Venom. The Dragon Riders have got the box and they haven't opened it yet, so we don't know what was in it, but we know that the Dragon Riders have got the box. In terms of the next book, I think they probably will go back to the War College. Whereas when I first read this, I was like, they can't go back now, not that they were a part of the rebellion. I think they will go back. I think that Violet will keep the secret along with them. I think they're all going to be like a group now who have this massive secret to keep. I think it's going to revolve around that. I think it's going to be her keeping secrets from her mom and Dane and maybe even Mira. Other than that, I have no idea. I have no idea how they're going to help basically the rebellion, because that's what's going to happen, isn't it? They are going to help the rebellion, but how and what's going to happen, I don't know. We've only got less than 2 weeks, like 10 days, 11 days until Iron Flame comes out. I'm so excited. I am going to wrap the video up here. I will leave links to the books in my description, not that any of you will need them because you've probably already bought them, but if anyone hasn't bought them and is interested, I'm going to leave affiliate links down in the description. I'll leave it there. If you have got to this point in this video and you've enjoyed it, please like it. Like, you've clearly enjoyed it if you've listened to this point with all my ramblings. And if you're not subscribed already and you'd like to be, I do lots of other bookish content on this channel, give me a subscribe. Other than that, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. I will see you next time. Bye.